Thank you so much for attending my PowerPoint presentation on Largo lore. The power of music. First, let's talk a little bit about the species that Largo belongs to, who are called the Murkroots and who live in the marsh delta of the Murkroot Forest. That location and anything related to it does not appear anywhere else in Dota lore, making it a completely new location, further messing up all of the creative fan maps that people have made over the years. The bulk of the Murkroots lived near the Marunga River, where they created political institutions that appeared to favor political isolationism and ethnic purity. I make this assumption because there is absolutely zero mention in the comic of anyone who is not a Murkroot, and no non-Murkroots are shown. This is important because the Murkroot people live near a very important body of water and therefore should become a political and social hub for multiple nation-states. Instead, they appear to absolutely refuse anyone coming in, and, humorously enough, the story actually justifies this. After who knows how long of living peacefully and only among their own kind, the Murkroots got hit by an invasive species that looked like a bunch of red thorns. This strange plant life, called the Talgaroon, quickly overtook the majority of their infrastructure, and all of their attempts to beat it back completely failed. For some reason, instead of going further inland where there might be people of other races, the Murkroots decided it would be better to hop on a bunch of boats and go out to open sea with absolutely zero plan of what to do. They wound up being out there for so long that they ran out of food and water and everyone started to die, and then one guy thought this would be a great time to play Jumper by Third Eye Blind. He stood up on the boat, began singing, and all of a sudden a giant island appeared right next to where they were. This is so convenient that I can only assume that some of the fine folks at Valve have been watching One Piece and realize that making an island appear out of nowhere is actually the bedrock of any good story. Seeing a golden opportunity to become even more isolated and inbred, all of the Murkroots immediately jumped on the island and began doing their thing. Real quick, I have a Patreon and I recently uploaded the bonus video for December, which is a tier list of something that I am afraid to talk about on YouTube. It's not sex. Feel free to check it out if you like, link is in the description. Now, once they inhabited the island, all of the Murkroots began getting sturdy with their second removed cousins and playing the same song that was used to summon the island all those years ago. In fact, it was the only song on the island to the point where it was literally just called The Song, and they played it all the time in order to keep the island happy. They even created an institution called the Bard Monks, whose only job was to remember how to play the song, though it seems like everyone on the island is at least passingly familiar with it, and they play it all the time. This is where the comic begins, with the head Bard Monk dying and relaying all of the previous information to Largo, which apparently he's done several times before, and Largo was kind of being a dick about it. He's an old man on his deathbed, let him yap. With the head Bard Monk dead, Largo is now the leader of the Order, and it's his job to somehow deal with the island falling apart. People are worried that if things get too bad, they might have to go back to being marooned at sea, or, even worse, interact with a species that looks different from them. Notably, the Bard Monks had some kind of cave that was forbidden to access except for the head Bard Monk himself, and inside was the ultra-final boss from Slay the Spire. Now inside of that cave is a giant tangle of roots and dirt that resemble a human heart, which is pretty gross. Largo heads down there and begins to play the song to it, but it sort of rejects it and falls apart even further, causing the little froggies to panic. In a desperate bid to save the island and maintain the purity of his people, Largo decides that instead of playing Jumper by Third Eye Blind, he will play Wonderwall by Oasis, and sure enough, the heart loves it. The island immediately begins healing, and the Murkroot people quickly restore their prosperity. Largo quickly comes to the correct conclusion that the heart was just tired of hearing the same song over and over, and for some reason, he was the only one smart enough to try playing literally anything else. Now that he's discovered that variety is the spice of life, the head Bard Monk's new goal is to escape the island, check out the outside world, learn some songs, and bring them back in order to keep the heart pumping. It's a noble goal, but it's underscored by the fact that those little twerking froggies that he carries around with him are actually in their mid-40s. Whenever you throw out your AoE stun, you're actually making Unk throw it back, and Unk is happy to provide. Now, as far as his personality goes, Largo is most definitely a chill guy. He has a lot of friendly voice lines depending on who's on his team, and even his insults whenever he kills you is usually a little bit more jovial than the average hero. A lot of his insults are actually based on the hero's inferred music abilities, with some of the more explicit musicians getting the most heat. With Beastmaster, for example, he says, "You're a better drummer than you were a fighter, and you drum like shit." There are a couple of others, including when he insults Mars singing, which is apparently a common thread throughout a lot of the heroes that came out after him. The Bard Monk Order is also quite important to him, and I assume those middle-aged tadpoles that he's trained to hit the Dougie on command are his apprentices, training to one day become Bard Monks themselves. He also has a thick New Zealand accent, because apparently Hoodwink alone was not enough to express Gabe Newell's adoration for the island country. Between these two heroes and the several Dota Plus couriers inspired by New Zealand's wildlife, I fully expect Valve to relocate headquarters to Auckland sometime by 2030. I wrote a little bit about the dark fantasy aesthetic that Dota once had but is now largely abandoned. Feel free to read it if you like. And now, as a quick bonus round, I just want to go ahead and clarify my stance on Largo and all the other all-hero videos that I've made. As for lore in one sentence, Largo is a frog who realized that playing the exact same acoustic guitar song over and over at a party doesn't actually make you a musician. As for his nightmare counter, I select Grimstroke, because if he's able to sick his dead wife on Largo in the middle of his ultimate, he's unable to keep the beat going, nor end it in order to right-click it off. He has no hands, and he must strum. As for item to counter, I'm going to go with Disperser, because it's able to purge all of the buffs that he puts on either himself or a teammate. It also grants mana burn, which is quite strong, though Nullifier and Yules are also good options. As for difficulty, I'm going to put him in Specialty Required, which is the middle tier, due to the rhythm game mechanic on his ultimate. There's a good amount of finesse to him, and you need to understand who Croak of Genius is good on. It's a unique piece of knowledge that doesn't really transfer to anyone else. He's probably in the lower half of the tier, though. A piece of tech is that his Aghanim shard has a special exception for Wind Waker, so it never casts on 2 targets, and you can use it as intended. Casting it on yourself will also not affect a random nearby friendly unit. The only thing you have to fear is saving up 2800 gold for a Mystic Staff as a Pause 5. He doesn't have any Monster Hunter lore, nor a sticker, which makes me kind of sad. Valve, please fix. As far as his political compass alignment, I would probably put him on the libertarian left side. He belonged to an agrarian isolated community that mostly seemed apolitical once their dreams of racial purity were fully realized, and there's no evidence of a centralized political power outside of the bard monks themselves. I need a little bit more time to truly say what he says about you, but I'll say that if you're picking Largo non-stop, Dota probably isn't even your main game, and you'd probably rather be playing Osu instead. And finally, Smash. In conclusion, Largo is an agreeable hero, and you should absolutely play him. I like to imagine that when they were still living on the Marsh Delta, there was a sort of frog shogun who declared the Sakoku Decree preventing anyone from getting in or out of their society. Perhaps the red thorns that invaded their original home was actually a parable, and it was just a different species that came by to say hi. Peace on planet Earth.